Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard the Wright Flyer Sky Bridge. This is your captain, Randy Wright, and I want to thank you for tuning in to this brief message that's a video-based analysis that I'm going to do with respect to some of the current events that are currently affecting us. One of the things that just recently happened yesterday morning on the Beck radio program was his shocking fallout with the candidate that he supported throughout the primary process during this 2016 presidential election cycle. I am, of course, speaking of none other than Texas Senator Ted Cruz. And the interview was very contentious, not unnecessarily rough for most of it, but there was something that caused a bit of alarm for me. Because as you recall, one of the things that we have repeated time and time again on the year that we've been taking you over the friendly airwaves is that we need to stop looking for messianic figures in politicians. We have to get back to this realization and notion that the only ones who are endowed by their creator, the God of nature himself, with the authority to save this nation, or to more accurately place this nation back onto the path to prosperity, is none other than we the people. That goes back to the inherent design of our constitutionally endowed federalist representative republic. And it's dangerous, I think highly dangerous, to begin to project your hopes and aspirations and dreams onto a particular candidate. I think that it spells disaster in the end because it leads to unrealistic expectations. And I believe that Beck was suffering from this. I got that impression during the interview, and then shortly after the interview, when Beck tried to come out and say that it was his fault, that he thought that Cruz would be another George Washington, and that for the first time he heard Cruz calculate in his answers. And this really didn't sit well with Beck. And I think at this juncture, it's important to show that clip. And unfortunately, it comes from those idiots at Right Wing Watch, but they were nice enough to have cut this down so I didn't have to go and parse it through the entire interview. So we'll start with that segment, and then I will give a brief analysis right after. So here we go.
For the first time, and I'm sorry if that was too contentious for people.
We should do, right? I mean,
yeah, and I will tell you that's not what I expected. But there was something in there, and I'm not going to go into it. There is something there where I have private conversations with people, and I know I know what was said, and I know the story. And for the very first time, I heard Ted Cruz calculate. And when that happened, the whole thing fell apart for me. And it's my fault. It's my fault for believing that men can actually be George Washington. It's my fault. I should have said, you know who can win? You know who could beat Hillary Clinton? Marco Rubio. And I disagree with him on the Gang of Eight, and there's about 80% that I do agree with him on. And he's kind of a politician, but he's a different kind of politician. He's a young politician. He's a Hispanic. He can win. Let's go for it. Instead, I said, let's find a truly honorable man. And that will always let you down. Right now, we have become PETA. Shame on all of us. Why not just, if you won't vote for Hillary or you won't vote for Trump, why not just cover me in a bucket of blood? Why not just shame me in the public square? Why not run them out of business? They're climate deniers. There is no difference between the two teams anymore. Oh, sure, one's for a little lower taxes, one's for the border, one's not. One's for international rule, one's for national rule. Which one is for the idea that all men are created equal? That all men have a right to pursue their own happiness and make their own goddamn decision? Which one? Which one? I contend neither of them. And so we will just soak each other in buckets of blood. We'll be a happy little bumper sticker community that shames one another into make sure you walk in goose step with all the other Hillary supporters or walk in goose step with all the other Trump supporters because she's going to mean the destruction of America. No, no, says the Hillary supporter. You must vote for us because he means the destruction of America. I contend they both mean the destruction of the idea.
So as you can see, folks, Glenn Beck was quite perturbed there. And he really did seem to struggle with this notion that he said Cruz was calculating. But what's so amazing about that is when you stop and think about it, with him wanting Cruz to be another General George Washington, the father of our country, when you look at the historical record with respect to George Washington, he was a calculating man. After all, he was, the main impetus behind the Culpeper spy ring. And that's actually what AMC's, series, Washington Spies, is all about. Washington very well understood the importance of not playing all of your cards, having a strategy, and being able to think ahead, to plan ahead. And could you imagine if Washington had not been calculating in his poise and disposition throughout that long, bloody, drawn-out struggle and conflict that was our American War of Independence, he would have folded at the first sign of trouble, or at the first great and significant difficulties and setbacks that the Continental Army would encounter. Think of the winters that he spent at Valley Forge and then at Monmouth, New Jersey, and how the Continental Army went through mutiny at that time. And again, Washington was calculating in his response to the mutiny. It would seem harsh by modern standards, the response that Washington had to the mutineers. He had the ringleaders selected out, tried via court-martial, and then sentenced to death by firing squad. But it wasn't just any regular firing squad. He had their co-conspirators, those who had allied themselves with the mutiny during that winter, pull the trigger. That was not some light decision. That was not something that you just think of on the fly. That was calculating, maybe even cold to a certain extent. But it speaks volumes about what is necessary to keep things under control, to try and plan for the future. Now, I'm not holding anything against Beck. Beck has done some amazing things with the establishment of the Blaze, with attempting to challenge the salivating mainstream media. But he did fall into one of those traps of trying to find a perfect messiah or messianic figure to be the one that you throw your support behind. But that is not what our founding fathers wanted. And since he said that it was his mistake for trying to apply George Washington to Cruz, or claim that he wanted Cruz to live up to the expectations and to the example set by General George Washington, I think it's important that we point out what George Washington warned against in his farewell address. At that time, the United States of America was undergoing the development of two separate, unique, and individual political parties, which are not necessarily, in fact, are not the two parties or mainstay political parties we have today. You have the Federalist and the Democratic Republicans. And Washington warned that if we divide ourselves into disparate competing factions, that we begin to lose sight of the overarching picture. And of course, the overarching picture is the supreme law of the land, which pursuant to Article 6, Clause 2 of our shared Constitution, states that the Constitution itself is the supreme law of the land. And the importance of that is when you parse it out further and go into the preamble to the United States Constitution, it starts off with the words, "We the people." And why? Because we the people are the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty in this constitutionally endowed federalist representative republic of ours. That means we are the ones tasked with the duty, obligation, but above all responsibility to proactively maintain and safeguard not only our representative government, but also our fundamental and inalienable rights, which were endowed to us by our Creator, who happens to be none other than the God of nature himself. You see, Beck is trying to find someone to come forth and save him. And not just him, the Republic. And yes, it's a very noble position to want to have a plan to save this country. The problem is, you cannot pin it all on one person. The very design of our country and our Republican form of government is that not one person, nor a singular entity or branch of government can act with carte blanche. And the problem is, we have encountered the shortcomings that are currently ailing and afflicting this republic of ours, not just from one branch of government, but from the entire onus and operations of government for decade upon successive decade. So if we really want to place this nation back onto the path of prosperity, we have to dig within ourselves. We have to, once again, realign our prerogatives and set an initiative for a long, drawn out, and yes, dare I say, calculated plan. So what Beck was upset with respect to Cruz, and I'm not saying that what Cruz was saying was right. I disagree with him. I do not believe that the 2016 presidential election cycle is a binary choice. I think that these candidates have to earn our votes. And still, neither Hillary Clinton nor Donald Trump have convinced me that they've earned my vote. Neither has Gary Johnson, neither has Darrell Castle, neither has Evan McMillan. But what it does show is that you fall into a trap when you try to project all of your hopes, dreams, and aspirations on a singular candidate. That is why we here at Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, go out of our way to say, don't do that. Don't fall into that trap. Because we still have to preserve our energies so that we can go forth with the efforts that are necessary, that we, in our capacity as the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty in this once thriving and flourishing representative republic of ours, can go forth standing shoulder to shoulder in solidarity and unity to place this nation back onto the path to prosperity as only we can. And folks, that was the calculated design of our government by none other than our founding fathers. And again, it shows their infinite wisdom and foresight with respect to this. Now, I know that these are dark, turbulent, and troubling times. But as long as we believe in the natural law tenets that underpin both our shared United States Constitution and our Republican form of government, and we understand that we are the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty, then no one can stop us. Only we can either save the nation or allow it to go down the current path and to stay the course of the status quo, which will inevitably lead to exponentially increased problems, hurdles, and adversities. So, again, Dig within yourself. Find your link to the Constitution. Read the Constitution. Reflect upon what our government is, and then vote your conscience. No one can tell you what decision you make is right or wrong. Sure, they can try and tell you, but as John Quincy Adams said, and I'm going to paraphrase here, always vote your principle. Though you may vote alone, you may rest assured that your vote will never be wasted. That is one of those timeless aspects of the natural law tenets that forms the bedrock of our nation. And I think that is what we have to get back to. Now, with that said, it is time to close for today. I'm Randy Wright, and I want to thank you for tuning in to this edition of our Skybridge program. We will see you next time. Do take care.